Hello, everybody, and welcome here to Wine with Jimmy. I'm delighted to have you on board. This is a wine educational channel, really just designed to help you get more from the wonderful world of wine. If you are studying the world of wine, you will find these videos very useful, hopefully, for your studies as they follow key text and key syllabus. Any comments or questions, please pop it in the comments section below this video. So the video here we're looking at is going to focus on New Zealand, and we're going to the South Island. So as you'll see here, we have 3 series that should be highlighted as South Island. And in the South Island, we're now moving on to a 5-part series. So part 1, looking at Marlborough and the Wairau Valley as our focus. So Marlborough will be split into 2. So this is part 1 of those 2, because it is by far the largest wine growing part of New Zealand. So these first 2 videos will be available as free content here on my YouTube channel. Parts 3, 4, 5, Nelson, Canterbury and Central Otago will only be available to those of you who subscribe to my e-learning portal over at www.winewithjimmy.com. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the location. As you'll see on the map here, I have highlighted the northern tip of the southern island, number 8 on that map, and that is Marlborough. So this is across the ferry from Wellington to Picton, south of the area of the Marlborough Sounds, and around 2 major valleys, incorporating places like Blenheim and Seddon. So we're going to go through these main areas, but before we do, we'll talk a little bit about the statistics and then the history, climate, and grape growing. So first up, the rather staggering statistics of Marlborough. It is by far New Zealand's largest grape growing region, and it has more than 2/3 of all plantings. You'll see here the latest statistics for 2023. You're really sort of knocking on the door of 30,000 hectares under planting, which is a significant amount, remembering that Hawke's Bay is the closest to that at 4,800. So a significant wine region. And we'll talk why that is as we go through the next number of slides. So a little bit of history here for you. The first vines were planted in Marlborough in 1873, but as I've mentioned in my history part of Series 1, due to a growing temperance movement and a climate initially perceived to be too cold, further attempts to grow grapes and to make wine were limited. The modern era of Marlborough's wine industry began 100 years after that, in 1973. When the director of Montana Wines, and Montana Wines, by the way, is now named Brancott Estate, saw the potential for making high-quality wines and bought over 1,000 hectares of land for, of course, turning into vineyards. You'll see here, Frank Yukich of Montana Wines places a silver coin, which is a token of good fortune in a hole in which a vine is to be planted. Now, Marlborough's climate, cheap land, and then from the 1980s, critical acclaim for the wines meant that in the following decades, particularly from the 1990s, Marlborough's wine industry grew rapidly. You'll notice, of course, very famous, iconic wines being produced like Cloudy Bay, for example, and the wines becoming very important across the globe. Now, the climate of Marlborough is another region for its success and big expansion. The Maori name for the region, Kai Puti Te Tuairi, means the place of the hole in the cloud. It's an appropriate description of this very sunny region, receiving around 2,410 sunshine hours per year. And to immediately put that into comparison with the Loire Valley, which it often is compared to, it's quite a few hundred more than that area, a big reason for its success. But the climate is cool, it is maritime, with moderately warm summers and mild winters. So we have cold conditions, high acidities, lots of sunshine and good UV light, which leads typically to good ripeness. Now, I have included here a topographic map of Marlborough. You'll see here's all the sort of Marlborough Sounds up in the northeasterly area. Here is two specific valleys, the Wairau Valley and the Seddon Valley. And then there is extensive mountains, as you will see. Marlborough is protected from much rainy weather by surrounding mountain ranges. And that means that, in fact, the annual rainfall is only something like 650 millimetres per year, which is about half of somewhere like Greater Auckland, for example. Now, free draining alluvial soils mean that irrigation actually is quite important here. And there's also underground aquifers providing the main source of water. The picture in the background here is Whitehaven Winery Vineyards with Mount Richmond in the distance. The high levels of sunshine, coupled with the relatively dry growing season, allows the grapes to be kept on the vine into the autumn and leading to very intense flavoured fruit. The long, dry growing season means that fungal disease is less of an issue than in other parts, such as the North Island, like Auckland or even places like Gisborne, for example. Now, machine harvesting is commonplace because most of Marlborough, and it's large, most of it is, of course, catering for quite large volume production. Now, machine harvesting is made possible due to the flat landscape. And research has shown that machine harvesting promotes the flavour precursors, the methoxypyrazine, and generates the passion fruit and green bell pepper aromas, which are typical in Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc. Now, the passion fruit character and ripe fruit will tend to come from, of course, the higher levels of UV light and sunlight, where the machine harvesting will create the higher amounts of methoxypyrazine. That research has shown that the aromas can be 5 to 10 times higher when the grapes have been machine harvested compared to when grapes have been hand harvested. Now, this is due to a short period of maceration on the skins that happens when the grapes are being picked and transported. There's basically a little bit of crushing, a little bit of skin contact, and that maceration, and this promotes some extreme intensified aromatics, amongst other things as well. So the subregions. Now, generally, grapevines are planted in those two main valleys that I talked about earlier when we looked at the topographic mountain map. So you'll see those highlighted here. This kind of sort of browner shade towards the north, which has Blenheim at its coastal point, Spring Creek, and then into Renwick. Then when you cross with the Wither Hills and down into the south, you're in here in the Awatere Valley, where we find Seddon, which is highlighted there in yellow. So the Wairau Valley in brown there is the largest, and that also has a bluish area called the Southern Valleys. But the Awatere, though it is newer, you'll find that there is an important production down there as well. We're going to focus on the Wairau Valley in this video. So it runs from the westernmost edges of Marlborough. So you'll see that's towards the left of your diagram there, along the Wairau River to the mouth of Cloudy Bay, highlighted on your map there. Climatic influences differ slightly along the valley. The western inland end experiences less moderating influences from the ocean, and therefore warmer days and cooler nights, so a greater diurnal range. But the coastal zones towards Blenheim will have more of a moderating effect, so less extremes. Now, the vineyards across the central parts going into the west are going to be at a greater risk of frost due to the drop in colder temperatures that is possible. Next up, we are discussing the geology found here. Now, the Wairau Valley is a former riverbed which provides a combination of alluvial soil, so gravel, silt, sand, loam, and clay, and they all vary in their composition according to the specific site. Now, in general, the soils are more fertile and the water table, in fact, higher nearer the coast. And this means these sites are more naturally able to produce higher yields than those that are further inland. These free draining soils will require irrigation, but also provide the warmth needed to extend the growing season in this area, allowing for intense aromas and flavours to build up over the season. Our key styles, so Sauvignon Blanc, which of course will come to you as no surprise, is the most planted grape variety, and depending on the soil and site, can vary from that tropical passion fruit to grassy asparagus, nettly, green peppery, herbaceous character. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay and Pinot Gris are also all widely planted. Now, at the end of the second video, the next video, I will discuss the key grape varieties in much greater detail.
Okay, let's look at the all-important Google Earth video to put this into perspective for you. There is the South Island of New Zealand, and of course, we're going to focus on the Marlborough region in the northwest. So almost 30,000 hectares here in this cool maritime climate. It has about 2,410 hours of sun, very similar to Nelson next door, which sits on the northwest. So this northeast area at about 2,410. That's Blenheim, major city towards Cloudy Bay. We're going to have a look now at the specific mountain range, which both the mountain ranges of the Richmond Range and the Spencer Range, which kind of are the opposite ends of the Wairau Valley. This protection here enables really good ripening. There is only low rainfall here, about 650 millimeters per year, due to this wonderful protection from these mountains. So you get great ripening and a really long, dry growing season. So that's where all those ripe fruit flavors come from in Sauvignon Blanc specifically. The Wairau Valley is the key valley we're looking at, the most northerly, the largest, and it goes from inland through Renwick to Cloudy Bay past Blenheim. It's a former riverbed of gravel, silt, sand, loam and clay. They're warm soils here and it needs a lot of irrigation. Of course, famous for Sauvignon Blanc.
But that does bring me to a conclusion of this part 1 of Series 3, looking at the South Island. Part 2 will go through Marlborough and the southern valleys, and also the Our Terre. Please do join me for that second part. If you do have any comments or questions, remember, please do get in touch. It'll be great to hear from you. What are your thoughts about New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, Marlborough in specific? Have you been to this region? What do you pair it with? Have you tried any of the other styles? And if you find yourself in the United Kingdom, do come and say hi for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now.